The long-awaited Elden Ring DLC is coming out in 3 days. Holy shit, I need to make a new build. I can't do this in New Game Plus. Relax. I've seen so many arguments online back and forth about this. You need to make a new character. New Game Plus is too hard. It wasn't designed for New Game Plus. Endgame character is ideal. FromSoftware DLCs are way harder. Relax. While there's truth in a lot of these arguments, I believe the information gets too lost in the sauce and chaos of degenerate online arguments to really understand what the fuck is going on. So in this video, we're going to find the answer to the question, do you really need to make a new character? Or is New Game Plus just fine? Make sure to stick around to the end to see the full pros and cons list. Alright, let's go. So we're going to start this off by talking about FromSoftware's history with DLC content for their Souls games. For anyone who doesn't know, these guys have been making these games for a decade plus, and now have amassed 7 decently sized Souls game DLCs. They are clearly well seasoned and experienced in balancing new and old content, but one of the common themes with these DLCs is that they are well known to be much more difficult than their respective base games. Of course, DLCs are designed to be played after already completing their base games. This is true for basically every game, except for something like Outer Wilds, for example, and the developers often communicate this directly to the player. So the argument that you should at least complete the game once before jumping into the DLC is strong, but what happens in New Game Plus? New Game Plus is seemingly designed to allow the player to repeat the game's content while challenging them even further. This is done not by adding new enemy attacks or additional game mechanics. The game simply manipulates numbers. What I mean is that a particular boss's health might be multiplied by 1.125, for example, while their damage output undergoes a similar modification. With each New Game Plus cycle, the challenge continues to increase before flatlining at New Game Plus 7. Even though the new DLC content has yet to be added, it will still be subject to the same modifications as the base game during New Game Plus cycles. So this brings me to the large concern that many people have, which is that with beefier and heavier hitting New Game Plus bosses, coupled with the fact that the DLC will already be harder than the base game, the challenge will be too great and the experience will be ruined. Well, New Game Plus is hard, right? Yeah, New Game Plus is so fucking hard. Oh yeah, it's hard. I'm hard. This is New Game Plus 4. Alright? Yeah, I'm using a bit of a cheese here, but the point I'm trying to make is that while New Game Plus seems daunting on paper, it's not actually that much harder. I'm on New Game Plus 4 on this character and have gone into New Game Plus on several other characters, and it has never been anywhere near as difficult as the first playthrough. That's because in New Game Plus, you already have your character well established and are now starting to actually over level if you haven't already. This guy is level 193, which is somewhere between 40 and 60 levels over the typical endgame character. I would argue that the additional health and damage that enemies have in New Game Plus is much less to increase the challenge and more to keep the player from being a literal god. Yes, some of the ease will come from your existing knowledge of boss attack patterns and capabilities. But I'm literally stomping on this guy's head while ignoring all of his attacks. I don't even remember what this guy can do because I haven't fought him on a fresh character in over a year. Let's take a look at some of the math that goes into this and compare it to this character's damage output to see how different this shit actually is. On the wiki, they provide all kinds of math and multipliers to help figure this out. It looks a bit complicated, but it all boils down to this equation. We're going to calculate the difference between Radagon's health on New Game and on New Game Plus 4 because that's the cycle I'm on. So the equation goes like this. Here's the boss's base HP times the multiplier for New Game Plus 1. I know I said 4, but the equation for anything beyond New Game Plus 1 is based on New Game Plus 1. So bear with me here. Then we have the multiplier for the number of players. Let's just get rid of this because we're solo, so it's multiplied by 1. Then we have the multiplier for the New Game Plus cycle. In our case, this number is 1.2 for New Game Plus 4. So that puts our boy Radagon at a rounded 16,023 HP. That's about 2,600 more HP than in New Game. Now, here's my build attacking this troll and dealing 1,600 damage. So all I have to do when I fight Radagon is jump attack him 2 more times than I did back in my first playthrough. Now there is defense and resistances involved, so let's just double that to 4. So that's 4 additional jump attacks. That's really not that big of a deal, guys. If you're someone who's chilling at New Game Plus 2 or 3 or maybe even 1, this is even less of a difference. That was the difference in health. I haven't gone over the difference in damage that bosses do since it's not as well documented, But the point I'm trying to make is that New Game Plus is made to seem like this insane, insurmountable challenge when it's really something much more manageable. Let's look at the other options that people propose. You can start a fresh character, and maybe you did this months ago, which would have been more ideal. But if you're like most, you simply don't have it in you to repeat 90 hours of content, which would mean you rush the mainline bosses to get to the end. Or you can take one of your half-played characters that you probably have and complete the game that way. Both of these options, though, involve rushing through the game's content, which isn't any fun and potentially burns you out before you even start the DLC. Finally, here's our pros and cons chart for the options that everyone's arguing about. The first option is New Game Plus 4 character, and I'm using 4 for an average New Game Plus. All of the consequences lighten if you're in a lower New Game Plus. So, number 1, you don't have to rush through the game, because you're already done. Maybe you just have to get up to Moog again. You have a build that you already enjoy. If you're playing it well into New Game Plus, you probably enjoy that build. And you likely have larval tears, which may come in handy when you find maybe a new weapon in the DLC that you really like and want to switch your build for. You start with no burnout, because you just started playing the game again. And you're probably over-leveled for the base game, which makes the DLC a little bit easier. The cons, though, is that you do have a slight to moderate challenge increase. And I'm saying slight to moderate because, remember, we talked about only being a handful more attacks to the last boss in the game. And now we have a fresh or half-played character. The pros for this is that you have an endgame leveled character, which is what people are arguing is the intended experience, which is free of New Game Plus challenge increases, and you probably had the opportunity to brush up on some rusty skills after not playing. The cons, though, is that maybe you had to rush through the game's content, which is not fun, and the build, if you're picking a half-played character, might not be one of your favorite because you stopped playing it halfway through. You might have to seek out larval tears for switching the DLC weapons if you find one that you really like, and you might be burnt out from rushing content. The last bit I'd like to add is related to all this intended experience business. A lot of people are saying playing the DLC at the end of the game, but before New Game Plus, is the intended experience by FromSoftware, which is something I find a little silly. We know DLC content is usually way harder than the base game, and I think this is intentionally done to account for all the players who've over-leveled into New Game Plus cycles. I mean, we're talking about the masterclass game design that comes from FromSoftware. It's really unlike them to overlook something like this. My decision is to play on my New Game Plus 4 character, which has my sick Dark Knight Moon double swordsman mage build, which I love, and deal with the additional challenge, which we showed before is not really that big of a deal. Alright, with all that being said, that's all that I've got today. Let me know down in the comments, have you already made your fresh character for this? Did the numbers make you change your mind? Let me know what your choice is, or if you're still deciding. If you like this video, please leave a like and share it with a friend, because if you do, then that will be something that you have just done. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a good one.